Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell for Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by costume designer Leslie Kavanagh, whose work includes Handmaid's Tale, Clarice, and Horror of Dolores Roach. Welcome to the show, Leslie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I guess my first question is, how did you get involved with Handmaids?
With the Handmaid specifically,
Yeah.
I think the connection was I had finished on the television series Clarice, and there was a producer that was on that show that's involved with Handmaid. So I'm pretty sure that was the connection.
Okay, so you came on in season 5.
I did.
And we have some images from your work, and I was wondering if you could just take us through your designing process with them, or explain what you were thinking when you're designing them.
Yeah, let's do it.
So what is this for? What part of the show is this for? And what can you tell us about it?
So this season 5, it's the first time that a new color classification has been introduced into the world of Gilead, and they are known as the Plums. And the Plums are the daughters of prominent commanders and their wives in Gilead, and a new finishing type school for wives in training has been established, and that's what the color denotes. However, the introduction of them was in the funeral episode. It takes place in the episode 2, which is actually called the ballet, but they are at the funeral in Gilead. And the idea was to come up with a look that, is brand new, that no one's seen, that makes people question, what is this? We are just introducing them there without really giving very much background information. And Hannah, who is the daughter of Luke and June, they are watching this on the Jumbotron in Toronto, the funeral. And so they see it's their daughter, and it becomes a whole thing about, what does this color mean? Why is she wearing that? We've never seen that before. So it becomes a questioning thing for a couple of episodes until it's sort of explained that the color denotes these wife finishing schools for wives in training for the young daughters. And of course, these are some sketch ideas I had been going through for different shapes and silhouettes and ideas to, essentially start the design conversation. Elizabeth Moss, the star and lead of the show, she's also a producer. She directed this episode. So these were things that I would be going over with her and talking to her about, do we like it longer, shorter, more full, all these different ideas of what the wife look, the Plums look for the wife in training school look be.
Interesting. Now, can I ask you, because, I've heard Margaret Atwood speak several times about writing the books. And one of the key things, she spent a long time at the Toronto Reference Library researching different histories of different cultures. And one of the things she always says is that all these rules, all these things come from somewhere in history. So like, it is something that's happened in some capacity. So when you're doing research for something like these looks, are you pulling from particular history, or is there a particular reference that you're going with for this?
So for all the different looks this season, I tried to stay true, I guess, to the original idea and I guess boundaries that were established in the first and second season. And Crabtree was the costume designer and was a very big part and very instrumental, obviously, of creating these iconic looks that everyone's very familiar with now. And so coming in season 5, for me, it was wanting to obviously stay within a certain realm of that, but also push it a bit, because that is what season 5 is about for Gilead. It's that they are putting their nation on show for the whole world to see, and they're trying to show that they're not stagnant, that they really believe in this great nation that they have, and that they want people to also embrace it and view it, I think, the way that they all, like the people that live there, see it. And so there had always been a very slight 1950s undertone to many things for the wives originally. And that was where my initial look for the plums was steeped in that. I did a sort of take on a 1950s swing coat that the young girls are wearing when we first see them. And there's a few practical reasons for that as well. These girls are, in the show, they're like 10 to 14 years old, somewhere in that, or 12 to 14 years old, somewhere in that range, because they're a little bit prepubescent. They're just getting on the, in Gilead world, be almost ready to bear children and become a good, dutiful wife, if you will. And so I played with that for the fact that I didn't want them in a cloak, because that's what the wives are wearing. So I wanted it to be training wheels, if you know what I mean, like that. They're not quite there yet, but they're on their way. So that everything is, they've got their gloves, their hat, their matching stockings and boots. Everything is, tight, like in a look like we've seen all the wives up till now, but then still have a little bit of youthful innocence to it. The casting that they did for these girls was great. They do a couple of close-up scenes where they go over all the young girls' faces, and you can see it. So it's just amazing the way that they all look. And I was really happy with the final look for the costume, because I really feel like it married all the things that I wanted it to do to showcase it at that funeral scene.
I'm going to interrupt this interview for 1 second. We want to thank PixelView, one of our sponsors. They're a streaming solution for filmmakers. PixelView lets you stream your work to remote clients for easy collaboration, and it works with both on-set teams and post-production teams. With built-in video chat, you can discuss and make changes in real time and stream directly from your editing software. Or you can use the hardware encoder to stream from DaVinci Resolve or the camera on set. See the promo code and the link in the video description below. There's a lot of scenes with a lot of people in it. So how do you stay on top of keeping everyone organized and looking good?
A lot of coffee. No, it's a sort of Tetris game of, how do you making sure you've got all the lists and everything going. When we shot this whole episode, the ballet episodes, which was number 2 in the series of season 5, on the side of the ballet where we see Lizzie playing June Osborne and her husband Luke in the show, and then the funeral, the sheer number of background that were involved, it was the biggest undertaking that the show and all the seasons had ever taken. And of course, when you're in Gilead, it is a head to toe look for everybody, because what's been set up in the series. So it was definitely a lot of charts and lists and checking and double checking and making sure that we had everything. A lot of, I would say, really great moving pieces in my department on the start, the middle, and the end process of how we make sure, and just having a really great solid team. I had a fantastic team behind me this season that were really, only make me look better all the time. And we just were really, really, I think, for me, I just had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do and the numbers. And I worked really closely, with Elizabeth Williams, our production designer, in talking about the sheer magnitude of what her world was going to be and how does my world fit into that world. So making sure that we were always cross-referencing everything. Having Elizabeth Moss as the director and the star and, producer of the show, she knows it inside and out. So having her as a great resource and reference at the drop of all I just have to do is give her a quick text or walk up to her office. That was also very instrumental for me to be able to stay, I guess, on target and know what I was going to do and how to execute it.
So now I want to ask, what we've been seeing happen in the States can be very unsettling for a lot of people. Is that something you take into account, like the real world politics that are currently happening? Does that influence you in any way when you're designing, or do you try to block that out?
To be really honest, for this specific show, I did not. Mm-hmm. It's very troubling. And I know that there's a lot of parallels, and people see a lot of parallels in between our show, what the message is and what is happening out there. I don't know that what I was doing from a visual storytelling point, I guess, was significant enough to have an impact on real world politics. I would never want to imply that I had any sort of agenda there, because I didn't. It was just trying to expand on the world that had already been set in motion from season 1 up till now, and create new character development of where people are in their journey in season 5 at this point.
Now, what would you say are some of the challenges you faced in terms of picking up where the previous costume designer left off?
Well, to be really fair, season 5 was a really interesting time to come on as a designer for a show that's already well into its seasons, because of the storyline. The storyline now focuses on June in, the free world of Toronto. So I really got to create what her character is now. We've seen her in flashbacks in previous seasons. And of course, everyone knows her in her iconic red Handmaid's outfit, but no one has seen what June is looking like now in her journey, in that she's finally out of Gilead. She's starting to process all of her trauma in a different way than, in Gilead, she's just surviving, and it's going from one situation to another to get by and to get through and to try to find Hannah and just live another day. Whereas in Toronto, she doesn't have to necessarily look over her back every 5 minutes. And while June is still working that out for herself, because she's, anyone that has suffered trauma like that it's not like you just blink your eye and then it's over. She's in a more safe place living with Luke and Moira, having a different support system. Even Rita's out now, and Rita's been out. So she does have a lot of different influences around her to help her, I guess, address that and try to move forward and work through things. And so it was creating a new character, essentially, of who is June Osborne now. And also we got to do that with Luke and Moira and Rita. Serena Joy this season, she's got 1 foot in Gilead and 1 foot in Toronto. So what was that like? Introducing the Wheelers. There was a lot of really, really interesting, and obviously for a costume designer, fun and exciting characters to introduce and be able to develop. And so season 5, I'm not sure that I had to really pick up necessarily from exactly where season 4 left off. But I would say that most of my influence really did come more from Anne Crabtree's original vision, and how did I expand on that in terms of staying within those confines, but pushing the boundaries so that I could also put my own stamp on season 5.
Now, with her in Toronto, do you get into the psychology when you're designing and think like, okay, well, she spent X amount of years not being able to choose what she wears, and all of a sudden she's in this new world where, like, you're not going to wake up and wear the same thing every day. So like, does that go into your thought process when you're creating this? Like, or are you trying to give her a new look specific to Toronto?
It definitely goes into that. So we did talk about this. She's a refugee. Where does she get these clothes? Where are they coming from? I also have to look scripturally, like what's happening. So I have things that are obviously important to the story of that episode. And for practical reasons too, we do shoot in Toronto and surrounding area in the winter. So we have to make sure she is warm. But the kind of fun part about making a television series is not every single choice does have to get answered. We stayed I do a lot of layering for her this season so that she can peel stuff off and put it back on, so that the audience is introduced to these pieces. Mm-hmm. So that when they see, like, in one scene, she's maybe got her coat with a hoodie and a t-shirt and jeans, but then we see her later, she's just in the t-shirt and jeans. It's not new pieces necessarily for that outfit or that script day. It's just that she's peeled layers off or she's added layers on. So we definitely did a lot of playing with that. And also, some things we just had a little bit of fun with, and we also could sort of take a little bit of liberties saying, like, well, maybe this was in Moira's closet, or maybe this was a jacket from Moira. In the first episode in 501 of this season, the storyline takes place direct continuity, meaning directly right where episode 410 left off. So we see her in the same black outfit that Deborah, the designer from season 4, did, but then we lost the red coat that she had on, and the coat that I put her in, we played it that when she's leaving, she's sort of in a state of confusion and euphoria and elation after everything that she's done from killing Fred. And she just goes to the back door and picks up a coat. And so we purposely made it look like it was one of Luke's coats. It's oversized on her. Luke was, you know, in the storyline, it was always in the construction side of things as a foreman. So it sort of had a Carhartt feel, although it wasn't actually a Carhartt. We just sort of played with that. And that's what she's seen in that. So we do try to sometimes purposely stage a few things in the set so that when she goes to grab it, it's, you know, for all those Eagle Eye fans, it's not like always, where did she get this? I mean, there is a little bit that, I mean, it is TV after all. So, but I do try to be, you know, do think about the purpose, like what's the purpose of this outfit? Because I do think June, you know, she's a warrior, she's a mother, she's a wife, she's a friend, she's a survivor, but she's fierce and she's unafraid. So like, I wanted to always, you know, I feel like she has purpose in when she puts things on, because she's had to, in all of this, all of her traumas sort of inform who she is now. Mm-hmm. And making sure she always had pockets and things to hide places, and that her footwear's practical. Like, so I do play around with little bits like that for sure.
Now, with pockets, do you have hidden pockets inside? Because my daughter just discovered a hidden pocket in one of her Jacksons and lost her mind. Like she's like, this is the greatest thing ever, and is hiding stuff in there.
Yeah, any woman will tell you, add a pocket to anything, and it elevates that outfit for sure. Some of the stuff does have hidden pockets. Some stuff we have, you know, we built some pockets into her stuff. It's also to help hide like the microphone pack that she has to wear. So it's double. It can be used as a pocket or it can be used as a microphone holder. So.
I do want to just point out, because Jason's just asked, there's no issues on my side. So I think it's on your side, Jason. He's just having a tech issue on his side. Now, and I also do want to say, I do appreciate, I don't know if you remember, because did you grow up in Toronto your whole life, or did you come from another city?
My father was in the military, so I've kind of grown up all over.
Okay, because the CanCon in the 80s, every time they did something in Toronto, it would always be the person was wearing either a Toronto Blue Jays hat or a Toronto Maple Leafs hat. It drove me nuts. So I appreciate that you haven't snuck in a Toronto sports team hat yet.
No, Elizabeth Moss would kill me. She's a big Cubs fan. So
really? now you've got it. Now you've got to try and just be like, and we've got some ideas. Here's the 80s Jays. Here's the 90s Jays.
80s Jays were cool, man.
Yeah.
Their gear was pretty cool.
Yeah, maybe that's why they were sneaking it in. So now, is there a particular cost? I don't want to see, it's weird. I don't want to call them costumes because it doesn't, I almost feel like that devalues the work in a weird way. It feels like you're talking about Halloween costumes, whereas like this, it's like looking at those photos that like I brought up earlier, like that's not a costume to me. So is there a particular piece of clothing or design that you did this year or this season that you was really difficult to execute, but you're really pleased with the outcome?
Ooh, that's a good question. They all, all the things that I have designed, and they are costumes. They're on camera costumes. I think that or creations. They all pose a challenge in a different way, and they all bring me joy in a different way, if that makes sense. Obviously, the Serena funeral outfit for me was magical. I thought it was beautiful and eerie and gorgeous and stunning, yet scary and intimidating. I loved what that costume was. Mm-hmm. I also, the ballet in the episode, this like episode 2, the ballet dancing outfit was actually interesting for me too, because it was an underwater theme that the production designer Elizabeth Williams was designing for the stage. And it was playing around with a lot of different ideas of what is the dancer is, I played around with different tones and fabrics. Like, is she a piece of seaweed floating? Was she a piece of coral? Like I was playing around with a lot of different colors and ideas and trying to get the perfect thing that would really convey that theme and also have real presence, because she's a solo dancer. When we had got the script and the treatment for that, it was originally a bigger ballet. That was going to be like, a big one. And upon discussion and Elizabeth Moss's vision, and ended up whittling down to one dancer because it was more serene and beautiful, and for intercutting it between the ballet and the funeral. So originally, like, my original vision was a little bit something different, because I thought we were going to have all these other support dancers, and then it wasn't that. And so even though the dancer's costume is quite simple in aesthetic to someone that wasn't involved in the process, getting to that process and making sure that it had all the elements for, having really flowy skirt. I found this really amazing metallic sort of finish on some silk chiffon, so it looks liquidy, and it's underneath the layer, so that when she moves you get hints and glow, so it looks kind of like she's fluid. So trying to find all of those things, I guess that was a little bit challenging. It turned out really, really pretty. I don't know, I have to just say, like, I know that sounds so, like, I don't know, whatever. It sounds something. I'm not sure what the word is, but
they're all your favorite.
Really happy with all of the looks this season. I was really happy with all the character looks, and that I really feel that we were really starting to find each character better, and really being able to hone in on that and define them a little bit more. And all of Elizabeth Moss's looks as June, all of Serena. I mean, doing Gilead is so great. I love really doing the Naomi Putnam character. She was really, she's really fun to do. And her wedding dress to Commander Lawrence was a lot of fun. I don't know. I love them all. I don't know. That's terrible to say, I guess, but I do.
No. Well, you also put all the work in, so I think you have a right to. So before COVID, I used to go to the Shaw Festival a lot, and you could sign up for these like private tours. So it'd be like behind the stages, and we went on one in the costume department, essentially, for the whole festival. And one of the things they do is they tend to, I guess I don't know if they lease them or they borrow them, but it'll be like historically accurate military uniforms or historically accurate dresses from a particular collection. Is that something you would do for a show like this? Like, oh, this is a dress from this collection that we borrowed for a scene, or is that just historical fiction?
It doesn't happen in Handmaids, not because it's just the nature of the series. We've built all of our own uniforms for, like, everything in Gilead is custom built and designed, and so it's specific to that world. But in other things I've done in my career, for sure, there's a lot of amazing rental places around the world. Here in Toronto, I did a show where we rented a lot of stuff from Stratford because of the time period that we were doing. The other thing too is people do knock that stuff off. If you have a big show and you have to dress a lot of background, or you need, many outfits for a lead actor, you will just go into history and go into researching that era, whatever it might be. And then you would build it. You would find the fabrics or have them sort of, trying to do World War I and World War II. It's tricky because the fabric, that kind of wool, isn't around anymore. So you would you're dyeing it and trying to make it. But there's a lot of amazing places like Shaw, like Stratford, Torelli in Italy, Cornejo in Spain, Angels in London. There's all different amazing rental houses all around the world that people, do rent and do period things, or they construct it themselves.
I have to say, because when I was there, they were like, oh, this is from World War II. And I'm like, I'm a much bigger person than I thought I was, because all the costumes are like tiny.
That is it. If you go into historical stuff, a lot of people were shorter, which is interesting.
Okay. Interesting.
And people didn't live as long, right? People didn't live as long as we are now. And so they are. And if you think historically into the wars, like World War I, World War II and all this, it was young men,
it was like
17, 17 going to war. So, which is, you look at that now, because of course today is Remembrance Day. So it's really important to, I think, remember that it was young, like, men that were, and older boys really going to battle. Like, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Now, I have one last question for you, and I like to ask this of everyone I interview. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure TV show or film to watch?
So I have two. So I'm a really big, interesting, again, I know it's Remembrance Day, but I'm a really big war movie buff. Like, I love war movies, and Black Hawk Down is one of my favorite movies that I love to watch over and over and over. And but I'm also a huge Star Wars fans, so I know the worlds are completely miles apart there. But anything from the Star Wars, movies, I can also just watch over and over. But New Hope really is kind of my favorite.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if you've seen, I can't remember the name of it. I've got to remember this because I've told several people about this, but there's a it's from Holland. It's a Netherlands film about World War II. And it's all about, it's based on a true story about, there was a group, because the Canadians came in and liberated. Yeah. And so there was a group of Netherlanders or Hollanders who discovered that the Germans were coming up at a different area and were going to attack. And so it's about them trying to get the knowledge to the Canadians before the Canadians advance. And that is a phenomenal film, especially if you're into costumes, because it's all 1945. So
I actually think I've seen this. Like, there's not too many that I haven't seen. And now the name escapes me, but I do think I have seen this. Yeah,
it's great. Great film. Well, it's so few that we see about Canada. So
I know that's like in sort of my dream world. My father was in the Canadian Armed Forces, and my brother is a veteran. He was in the Canadian Armed Forces as well. And one day I maybe will try. I've never done it before, but I would love to make a documentary on Canadian soldiers.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating.
Their contributions, because we really do and have contributed so much. And I think we're a little less known for that. Yeah.
Well, we are, sitting next to, the elephant in the room, I guess, the biggest militaries, and, they played a big part too. So it's kind of hard to shine a light on us when they have Hollywood.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Listen, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure and a real joy talking to you.
Thanks. And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com and, of course, on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Raquel. Thanks for watching. Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.